We have engine fuel filter right engine, and it says contamination can occur. We have done the checklist. We sorted out the problem.
India 315, sorry, say again the problem.
Engine fuel filter problem. Engine fuel filter problem.
On June 16, 2025, at Hong Kong International Airport, a Boeing aircraft operated by Air India was undergoing a thorough inspection by technical staff, with special attention paid to its two General Electric GEnx engines in preparation for the upcoming journey. This was Air India Flight 315, scheduled for a routine route from Hong Kong to New Delhi. The aircraft, a Boeing 787-9 Dreamliner that had been in service for 7 years, completed all technical and ground procedures before boarding began. After all preparations were finalized, boarding commenced for Flight 315. At 12 noon, the aircraft systems were powered on. Upon receiving clearance from ground control, Air India Flight 315 took off from Hong Kong International Airport, officially beginning its journey to New Delhi. At 12:50 p.m., more than 30 minutes after takeoff, the aircraft had reached a cruising altitude of approximately 22,000 feet. At that moment, the cockpit warning system recorded an abnormal signal. An indicator light for a fuel filter issue on the right engine illuminated. The pilots reacted immediately. The first officer activated the emergency checklist on the electronic display and began reading the steps aloud so the entire flight crew could coordinate their response. According to standard procedure, the checklist indicated that the fuel might be contaminated. As a result, the system automatically rerouted the fuel flow to bypass the filter in order to maintain fuel supply to the engine. This typically occurs when the filter is clogged or has failed. In severe cases, the most dangerous consequence is a disruption of fuel supply, potentially compromising engine stability. The captain instructed the first officer to closely monitor the engine's technical parameters and assess whether the aircraft could continue flying safely. At 1 p.m. local time, after evaluating the current situation, the captain proactively contacted Hong Kong Air Traffic Control to report a technical issue involving the fuel system. The captain requested to cancel the flight plan and return to Hong Kong to ensure flight safety.
India 315, sorry, say again.
With technical reasons, sir, we'd like to stay closer to Hong Kong. Maybe we will come back and land back into Hong Kong once we sort out the problem. We don't want to continue further.
India 315, maintain passenger level, advise when able for right turn to Hong Kong.
Able right turn right now in 315.
And able advise the problem of the aircraft.
We have engine fuel filter right engine, and it says contamination can occur. We have done the checklist. We sorted out the problem.
India 315, sorry, say again the problem.
Engine fuel filter problem. Engine fuel filter problem.
India 315, roger.
Upon receiving the crew's return request, Hong Kong Air Traffic Control immediately approved Air India Flight 315's return. The captain promptly maneuvered the aircraft to turn back toward the departure airport. Considering the warning related to the right engine's fuel filtration system, airport authorities assessed that continuing the flight to New Delhi would pose unnecessary risk. At approximately 1:15 p.m., the aircraft landed safely at Hong Kong International Airport. After completing taxiing and deplaning all passengers, the Boeing 787 was officially taken out of service for technical inspection. The aircraft remained grounded for approximately 28 hours. Ground engineers conducted a thorough examination of the fuel system to identify the cause of the malfunction. Possible scenarios included a replaced fuel filter or a sensor-related fault triggering the warning. A definitive conclusion could only be reached through detailed inspection. Although the exact cause of the incident had not yet been disclosed at the time, the most critical factor in this case was the captain's decisive response and strict adherence to safety protocols, which ensured the absolute safety of the passengers. So, what exactly does a fuel filter warning mean? This warning indicates that the fuel system of one of the two engines has encountered a problem, specifically in the fuel filter section. When the filter becomes clogged or detects an abnormality, the system automatically triggers a warning. This suggests that the aircraft might be experiencing fuel contamination or the presence of impurities in the fuel. Such a condition can affect the stable operation of the engine and is therefore classified as a serious event. In fact, fuel contamination was one of the main hypotheses behind the crash of Air India Flight 171. This theory suggested that abnormal engine performance could result in a loss of thrust. Since that incident, Air India pilots have been trained to remain highly alert whenever any abnormality related to the fuel system occurs. The standard procedure is to immediately return to the nearest suitable airport. Even if the issue affects only one engine, it must not be taken lightly. Recently, there has been ongoing discussion surrounding whether fuel contamination was the cause of the Air India Flight 171 crash. Some experts believe this possibility is unlikely, as the aircraft's two engines draw fuel from different tanks. However, this assessment is not entirely accurate. During takeoff and the first 3 to 3.5 hours of flight, both engines draw fuel from the center tank. If the fuel in the center tank is contaminated, then simultaneous failure of both engines is entirely possible. After this period, the system automatically switches to the left and right wing tanks. But it's important to note that all fuel on board is loaded at the departure airport. If the refueling equipment itself was contaminated, then all tanks are at risk of being compromised. Therefore, once a fuel filter warning is triggered, the safest approach is to treat all fuel on board as potentially unsafe, rather than waiting for more symptoms to appear before taking action. This was precisely the decision made by the captain of Air India Flight 315. In response to the warning from one engine, the captain immediately requested to return to Hong Kong instead of continuing to the destination. This decision was based on practical experience and reflects a core principle of aviation operations. Always prioritize safety and never rely on optimistic assumptions to take unnecessary risks. In aviation, an initial anomaly, if not addressed in time, can trigger a chain reaction of failures, potentially escalating into far more serious consequences, including the loss of thrust in one or even both engines. This is why experienced captains tend to make early decisions when faced with potential risks. This kind of risk-based thinking is not only a part of Air India's flight safety culture, but also a key principle widely followed by commercial pilots around the world. No warning related to the fuel system should ever be underestimated. Flight safety must always take precedence over everything else. Although the Air India Flight 315 incident was properly handled and ended safely, the fuel system warning inevitably reminded many of the recent and serious crash of Air India Flight 171. Although the severity of the two incidents differs, both involve the fuel system. This similarity has kept the public's attention focused on the unresolved details behind the crash of Flight 171. As of now, more than half a month has passed since the Flight 171 accident, yet the black box data has not been released. Both flight data recorders, the cockpit voice recorder and the flight data recorder, were recovered shortly after the crash. However, the decoding process and the progress of the final investigation have been notably slow, leaving the fuel contamination theory in the realm of speculation, lacking solid evidence. According to investigators, the official analysis of the black box data began on June 24th. Since then, technicians have been working to extract and process the information stored in the two recorders. Many hope that the contents of the black boxes will provide key clues to help determine the cause of the accident and offer effective safety recommendations for the future. However, growing numbers of people are beginning to question why the release of the black box data is taking so long. In reality, retrieving data from a black box is not as simple as plugging in a device and reading a file. The cockpit voice recorder only captures the most recent 2 hours of cockpit audio. However, within this time frame, it records a vast array of sounds during the flight, including pilot conversations, warning alerts, control lever movements, switch clicks, and even mechanical noises and ambient background sounds. Each of these audio elements could be a vital technical clue. As a result, technicians must not only extract the audio data, but also synchronize the timeline, analyze the content, filter out background noise, and cross-reference it with the flight data recorded by the flight data recorder in order to reconstruct a complete picture of what occurred inside the cockpit. Currently, a cockpit voice recorder that meets civil aviation standards can store up to the most recent 2 hours of audio. The other device, the flight data recorder, depending on the number and frequency of parameters recorded, can store approximately 17 to 24 hours of technical flight data. The flight data recorder continuously monitors almost all critical operational parameters throughout the entire flight, including engine performance, altitude, speed, flight controls, trim settings, electrical systems, cabin pressure, flight control inputs, and switch operations, and other data related to the aircraft's overall condition. If the device itself was not damaged, data extraction is relatively straightforward. It can be connected to a professional workstation to back up the internal data. However, if the device is damaged, the entire process becomes significantly more complex. Technicians must cut open or heat the protective casing of the black box, then send it to a specialized laboratory for further analysis under controlled conditions. Currently, 4 main organizations are directly involved in the investigation: India's Aircraft Accident Investigation Bureau, AAIB. This agency leads the overall investigation and has jurisdiction over the black box. Boeing Company. As the aircraft manufacturer, it provides technical support and system analysis. U.S. National Transportation Safety Board, NTSB, participates as the American representative in the investigation. The black box manufacturer, a company specialized in aviation data recording devices responsible for decoding and assessing the condition of the equipment. All parties have sent representatives to Sindri to coordinate the on-site work of data extraction, analysis, and evaluation of the black boxes. The entire process must be executed with great precision, as all data must be extracted completely without any damage or corruption. Only after confirming the successful retrieval of the data can the actual decoding and accident analysis begin. At present, investigators are evaluating several major hypotheses to determine the true cause of Flight 171's accident. These hypotheses include a complete electrical failure, hydraulic system malfunction, dual engine failure, or a compound failure involving multiple issues occurring simultaneously. Other technical scenarios are also under in-depth analysis, including fuel contamination, vapor lock phenomena, failure of the full authority digital engine control (FADEC) system, and simultaneous failure of both engines. The biggest challenge of this investigation lies in the extremely short duration of the incident. Unlike typical aviation events, which usually unfold over several minutes, this accident occurred in under 60 seconds. Within such a limited time frame, multiple system failures may have occurred almost simultaneously. Numerous warning signals were likely triggered at the same time, and the entire event sequence was compressed into an extremely brief window. This means that data analysis is no longer a linear review, but a process of untangling a chain of intertwined events, similar to unraveling a knotted rope, where each knot is critically important. Although the flight data recorder of Air India Flight 171 did capture the entire flight data, identifying the root cause versus secondary effects within this dense stream of information requires a high level of precision and technical judgment. Due to the rapid onset and highly complex nature of the incident, the analysis will require more time before a final conclusion can be reached.